Last year, we made a video showing you guys how to stay safe while you ride motorcycles in traffic. Well, that video's got 1.5 million views and climbing, which is terrifying because you guys obviously have no idea how to ride in traffic. So today, we're making another one. Now, whether you're a new rider or have been riding for years, riding in traffic can be a pretty daunting task and scary sometimes. But don't worry, in today's video, I'm going to give you guys 5 more essential tips that are going to help you guys ride around traffic safely and confidently. Now, this isn't going to be another one of those top 5 blah 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 videos. These are crucial habits that if you use, could end up saving your life while you're riding around traffic. Let's get into it. But before we get into traffic, we got to thank the company sponsoring this video, which is Dairyland. Now, as motorcyclists, we know how important being prepared is, or at least you should. It's kind of the point of the entire video. But being prepared is even more important when it comes to insurance. If you guys want to grab comprehensive coverage for your motorcycle, we'll have a link for Dairyland in the description down below. Dairyland's got your back. Also, by supporting Dairyland, you're directly supporting this kind of content. Thank you guys for doing that. Let's get into the first tip, and I will kick my kickstand up.
Alright, let's talk about tip 1, avoid the center of the lane. You might think that sticking to the middle gives you the most space from the cars to your left and right, and while you are technically correct, that does not mean it's a safe place to ride. This is actually the place where all the grime and the oil and slippery residue accumulate over time. Heck, just look at the road in front of you. I bet you can tell the very middle of the lane is a little darker, right? Yeah, that darkness is your oil and debris filled nightmare. You gotta think about this from a perspective of the types of vehicles that, at least here in the US, make up the majority of the traffic. 4-wheeled vehicles. The car wheels very rarely touch this area of the road, so all the debris and oil just collect in the center, making it incredibly slick. Any oil that might drop from the bottom of the car, guess where that's going to go? Right in the middle of the lane. This danger is even more pronounced during the first 10 minutes of rainfall when the oil rises to the surface and turns that area into a damn death trap. Be particularly cautious during that initial rainfall period because your braking distance is significantly increased and handling becomes tricky. If you don't know about braking distance, it's the amount of length or time that you as the rider need to have between you and the vehicle or obstacles ahead of you. Even painted road markings like stripes and crosswalks can become dangerous obstacles, so you don't want to be in the center when you have to brake or swerve. Instead, use the areas the tires of the cars are running over and ride in the tire tracks left by the cars. These tracks are going to be more clear because they're getting used by all those car tires, which will help in cleaning out the debris and picking up hazards. Hey, if the cars are leaving all the crap in the middle of the lane, we might as well utilize the clean spots they create for us. Don't think that this is just for when it's wet outside either. In dry weather, the center of the lane can still be a nightmare, especially if you need to brake hard. Periodically scan the road surface ahead of you, identify potential hazards, and plan your lane position ahead of time. Tip number 2 is all about visibility. If you can't see the driver ahead and their mirrors, they can't see you. Blind spots are a rider's worst enemy because car drivers have no idea we're even there. There is something weird that happens with car drivers, at least here in the US where motorcycles aren't as prevalent. Drivers get so used to seeing cars that when they do come across a motorcycle, it's almost like their brain doesn't even associate it as a vehicle on the road. This is why we want to make sure we stay in line of sight with them as much as possible to give their brain that time to realize that we're actually there. Now, every vehicle has a blind spot and most drivers don't even realize how large their blind spots are. At this point, you're probably thinking, well, if I have to maintain line of sight with a driver, how the heck do I pass them on a multi-lane road? I try to stay in the blind spot of the cars to my left and right as little time as possible. That means if I'm proceeding faster than the cars on my right, then when I get to the blind spot where I can't see that driver anymore, I'll give the bike a little bit extra throttle to give me a little quick burst of acceleration to jump into the next location where I can have line of sight on the driver. If I'm proceeding slightly slower than a car that's to my side and I'm positioned by their doors, I'll do the same thing. Speed up a little bit until I'm parallel with the driver so I'm obviously there. This will cause you to modulate your location in the lane and in traffic more, which could look weird to drivers, but that's just because we're doing what we have to do to stay safe. Now, this can get even more complicated if you're in a major city like me and you have cars on your left and right while on the highway. In these situations, I would say do your best to stay out of the blind spots of the most obvious drivers who aren't paying attention. Most of the time, it's terribly obvious which ones these are. Tip number 3, if you're at the front of an intersection, always proceed with caution. As motorcyclists, we love being in the front and often get on the gas right when the light turns green, but this habit can be dangerous, especially with red light runners. Last year, I had one morning where I was rushing to the shop. I left on my bike in a hurry that morning, and as it always happens, when you're in a hurry, you always seem to get every dang red light possible. So as I'm rushing red light to red light, I came up to a busy intersection that I went through literally every morning. I actually got the front spot at the light, which as a motorcyclist, we want. No slow drivers not paying attention to slow our launch down when the light turns green. So I'm sitting there watching the crosswalk sign count down so I know right when the red light is going to turn green. Finally, the timer clicks down to 1. I see the other light turn yellow. I know my light's about to turn green and I'm gonna get my chance. Then, boom, my light turns green, and in my hurry, I get off the line too quickly, I release my clutch too fast, didn't give it enough throttle, and yep, ended up stalling my bike.
Now, it goes without saying how embarrassed I was in that situation, but it turns out that that mistake might have ended up saving my life. So after I got my bike cranked back up, I look up to start progressing through the intersection, and I see a giant SUV come rushing through on the lane of travel that I was going to be getting in. And they had to be going at least 60 miles an hour. I think at that point, I had an out-of-body experience because never in my life had I seen a vehicle moving that fast through a red light that had been red for them for that long.
At that moment, I sat for a second thinking of how bad an accident that could have been, and it almost seemed like fate made me stall my bike that morning. After what happened to me that day, I don't care if it's the same intersection or any intersection. When I come up to one, I always slow down and I look twice before going through. Now, I know motorcycles are fun and we want to have a good time riding them, but when I say never launch off the line when you're in the front of an intersection before scanning, I legit mean never do that. Tip 4, turn off your blinkers. It's funny that car drivers never seem to use their blinkers, and we riders typically have the opposite problem. The thing is, both are dangerous. As a motorcyclist, one of the biggest worries we have when we see a car pulling up and preparing to enter traffic is, I really hope they see me. I've had too many of you guys share stories of cars pulling up to merge, not seeing the rider, and then pulling out with no time for the rider to avoid them. The next thing you know, the rider nails the side of the car and is flying through the air. Having your blinkers on when you're not turning could massively increase the chances of this happening, and it could be your fault for the accident. After you make a turn, make it a habit. Just push the middle blinker button. Get to the point where you do this even without thinking about it. Making a left turn, middle button. Making a right turn, middle button. Road randomly curves? Hell, why not? Middle button. Now, I know keeping up with the blinkers on your bike is a little more complicated than a car. We don't have that constant ticking annoying us to turn it off, and on a lot of bikes, it's hard to even see your blinker light flashing. This is why making it a habit to constantly hit that middle button is just the best move I have personally found. Having your blinker going can especially be dangerous when changing lanes or preparing to merge because drivers may misinterpret your intentions based on the blinker. They might think you're about to turn or exit, leading them to make decisions that could put you at risk. Make it a habit to double check your signals and turn them off immediately after a turn. If your bike has self-canceling blinkers, that's a plus, but always verify that they're switched off properly. Tip 5 is know where to watch. As a motorcyclist, you're taking on more danger by traveling this way, so it's up to you to stay aware of 99% of the cars around you. Most car drivers only pay attention to the vehicle directly ahead of them. When you're surrounded by metal and airbags, sure, you can drive like that all day. You shouldn't, but that's what most people do. Ever notice how car drivers will suddenly slam on brakes because they happen to see brake lights ahead? That's because they're not vigilant and aren't expanding their window of awareness. As a motorcyclist, you need amazing situational awareness. This means that instead of focusing solely on the car directly ahead of you, you need to be looking 2 or 3 cars ahead, monitor the cars beside them, and keep track of the vehicles directly behind you. The reason we do this is because we never know what dangerous situation is going to randomly come at us, and we need a way of avoiding all potential hazards. You should have multiple escape paths that you can utilize at a moment's notice regardless of what situation arises, and having that awareness of what's around you will make that possible. The traffic check should be something you do every few moments or just keep in the back of your mind constantly. Always think of it as like a sonar on a submarine. Every so often, it pings and it does a check of what's in range. You can do the same thing. Every so often, have your brain ping and do a quick check of the cars directly around you and keep those eyes far ahead of you to see what's coming up. If the cars behind you is tailgating, change lanes to let them pass or increase your distance from the car in front. This is going to allow you to slow down gradually, reducing the risk of being rear-ended. And if you can't see 2 cars ahead of you due to a vehicle size or something like that, consider changing lanes to one where you have a clear view. Maintaining your focus on 2 cars ahead, the sides, and behind gives you the best chance of identifying hazards early and responding before a crisis even occurs.
And guys, those are my top 5 tips to keep you guys safe while you're out there riding in traffic. If this video helped you guys out, make sure to hit that like button, put OC in your comment down below, and share one of the tips you use to stay safe while you're out there in traffic. If you guys are new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'm Chaseontwowheels, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Ride safe.